A top Iranian soccer official was turned back from entering Canada this week, just 6 weeks ahead of the World Cup start. The feds acknowledge he had a visa, and critics want to know why.
My understanding is that there is a revocation of the permission. It was unintentional.
How did this happen? How did this guy get on a plane? He's an Iranian regime official, like clearly documented. I think a simple Google search would have told them that.
Mehdi Taj and his delegation were reportedly turned away after landing in Toronto Tuesday night. Taj is a former commander in Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Canada lists the IRGC as a terrorist entity, but Iran says Taj was granted a temporary residence permit to attend this week's meetings. The immigration minister's office would not comment on this specific case, but says IRGC officials are inadmissible to Canada in the first place. Let's bring in James Dorsey, who's the author of The Turbulent World of Middle East Soccer. He joins us now. James, good morning to you.
David, a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, this latest incident at Toronto's Pearson Airport underscores the weirdness of having Iran play its 3 matches in the United States at a time its country is at war with the country it'll be playing the games in. How do we process that?
I think this points to a more fundamental and much broader contradiction in international sports policy, even though it's one extreme expression of that. And that contradiction is the relationship between politics and sports. Sports is supposed to be apolitical. The fact of the matter is that, to the best of my understanding, there were 2 incidents at Canadian airports. One had to do with the Iranians, the other had to do with the Palestinians. Ultimately, the Palestinians were let in. Now, the problem with Iran, of course, is that the Revolutionary Islamic Guards Corps has been proscribed by Canada and some other countries as a terrorist organization. On the other hand, Mehdi Taj, the head of the Iranian Football Federation, is a former commander. He's not a commander at this point. And we've seen over the last decade, if not more, the Guard Corps increase its influence within Iranian sports and particularly within Iranian football.
Well, and let's be clear, the IRGC is not a regular job. You don't get to quit it at some point. You are in it for life if you're in it at all. Is this somebody who should have been granted a visa, allowed to come to this country in the first place, even if he was ultimately turned back?
I think, first of all, let's be clear, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is a military organization that has been involved in political violence within the borders of Iran, as well as outside of the borders of Iran. There are, like in any organization, the officials and their former officials. Now, clearly, those former officials do maintain close relations with the organization, as well as with other former commanders. There's no doubt about it. I think, as a matter of principle, if you're going to have tournaments in which the participants are not judged by their political systems, their human rights records, despite what you would think would have to follow from the FIFA statutes, then that goes as much for Iran as it goes for any other country.
There are indications the Trump White House tried to have Iran, which qualified for the World Cup, removed from the tournament altogether. That doesn't seem to be going anywhere because they were trying to get the Italians to replace them, the Italians who did not qualify. That such a suggestion would even be floated. What does that tell you about how extraordinary the moment we find ourselves in is? It's
remarkable, to say the very least. Again, I think there's an issue of double standards. If you want to apply the standard of banning Iran from an international tournament, there are a fair number of other countries that would qualify for the same treatment. It also goes to as I mentioned earlier, the relationship between politics and sports. That relationship is that of Siamese twins, joined at the hip and inseparable. It's a relationship that somehow has to be governed or supervised and controlled by guidelines and rules and regulations. And we don't see that. And that's part of why we're getting these kind of issues.
You have written about how soccer is used as a political tool in Iran by the regime. How will that play out at a time of perhaps not active war, but it could very well spark up again?
It's the role of sports, particularly football, in the Middle East, including Iran, is vital. It's crucial. It's both an opportunity and a risk factor for autocratic regimes. Opportunity in the sense that if you have successful teams, then you can align yourself with their success as a regime. And at the same time, football stadiums are venues of protest. And so the fact that the Guard Corps over the last years has sought to increase its influence and control of major football clubs in Iran shouldn't come as a surprise.